My husband, 33, has a friend, Carl, 33, who he considers to be one of his closest friends. My husband sometimes calls Carl his nicotine because of how much he misses him and wants to spend time with him. They do everything together. They're even coworkers working the same job. Unfortunately, Carl's wife passed away from cancer 3 months ago, which caused him to distance himself. My husband felt devastated for him. He recently started spending more time with him and brought him meals. We planned a 3-day vacation to another state. I made a hotel reservation for 2. Unbeknownst to me, my husband had invited Carl to come with us. This made me upset because it spoiled the entire vacation. Not trying to be dramatic, I only found out when he went to pick him up. I sucked it up after my husband explained that Carl is a recent widower who's been wallowing in grief for so long and needed this vacation. The problem is money is tight, and since Carl hasn't worked ever since his wife passed, he couldn't pay for his own room and we didn't have a budget for it. My husband said that we should just share one room. I again sucked it up since he said that we'd be out all day on the beach anyway. First night, I was in bed when my husband and Carl got back. I got woken up by my husband telling me to get out of bed and sleep on the mattress he put on the floor for me, and that he and Carl would take the bed. I asked if he was serious and he asked what else is he supposed to do. He said that Carl was a guest and we can't let him sleep on the floor, and at the same time, I can't share a bed with Carl while he, my husband, sleeps on the floor. I told him I didn't sign up for this, but he told me to suck it up and try to put the Carl as a widower card. I told Carl to get out and then got up and got dressed to go home. My husband started yelling at me, calling me irrational, but I wasn't having it. I left the hotel and traveled back home. Carl didn't say anything when he saw me leave, except that I was making this non-issue an issue. When they got back, my husband refused to even talk about it, but still said that I ruined this for Carl and us and acted aberrantly and disgustingly. I admit Carl is struggling and I might have ruined this for him, but I didn't even know he was coming. Am I the asshole for going home after I got told to sleep on the floor? I work as a security guard, and me and my team have traditionally worn a typical police-style uniform when on duty. We recently had a new site manager who wanted to change our image and impose one of those concierge-style uniforms with a blazer and tie, despite all of us objecting as it was uncomfortable, impractical, and we all hate the way it looks. The manager told us the uniform change was coming whether we liked it or not, because one thing he cares about more than anything is presenting the right image. So after we began wearing the new uniform, my team, at my instruction, began to deliberately make ourselves look as gross and slovenly as possible. For example, we would spill food and drink on our uniforms on purpose and not wash them or iron them prior to starting a shift. One guy made a point of wearing his uniform when he went to the gym and worked out before coming on duty, so the uniform was crumbled, drenched in sweat, and reeking. We would drag our blazers through the dirt and mud and wear shirts half untucked. When I needed to sneeze, I would openly and in front of clients sneeze into the tie that I was wearing and loudly blow my nose into it like it was a handkerchief. Also, at the end of every shift when writing our reports, each of us would always litter the report with mentions of how bad the uniform was and how it made the job more difficult. Complaints about our appearances skyrocketed, and the manager held an emergency meeting where he screamed at us and called us selfish a-holes. But we refused to be cooperative, so he was eventually let go because he couldn't manage us effectively. Before he left, he told me that I was the biggest piece of crap he ever met for being the ringleader of this whole thing. I don't think I am, but the fact that he was fired and has a family is the thing that makes me consider that maybe I am. Am I the asshole for leading a mutiny against the new uniform policy and getting a guy fired? 2 years ago, I, 27, got married in a courtroom just to get the immigration paperwork started for my abroad now husband, 29. He always promised to provide me with a real ceremony eventually. The ceremony I wanted was picked out and cost about $7,000 in a South American resort, includes ceremony, reception, and week-long honeymoon. I loved the idea since it was a country both our families could easily fly to. We could have had it in my country, USA, but not his, since members of my family legally aren't allowed to enter his family's country due to felonies. To be fair to his family, I suggested that we all travel instead of just his family traveling. These last 2 years, I've been planning and saving for our marriage. I have $6,000 set aside exclusively for it. Meanwhile, I've also spent thousands on his immigration fees to make it eventually legal for him to live and work here. He stayed in his own country in the meantime these last 2 years. Our immigration case is almost at the final part. All that's left is paying 2 last fees to the NVC from a USA bank account. Since I'm the only one with a USA bank account, it's up to me. I joked and said, "Alright, I'm about to spend this last 500-ish bucks, but I'm still waiting for that ceremony date." To which he replied, "Why bother since we're already married?" He further explained he liked my self-made website and invitations I had ready to go for the wedding, and that he was proud of me for holding on to an idea for 2 years. But that it's a waste of money in his eyes. But he wouldn't be opposed to it if I just paid for it myself. Me and the wedding planner at the resort were completely blindsided since this came out of nowhere. He seemed happy with it, and I assumed that he would contribute to the price up until that point. I didn't put my bank details in, so the immigration case completely halted. He says I'm ruining his future, but why should I hold up my end when he didn't hold up his? His family and him both really think that I'm being an a-hole. Am I the asshole for canceling my husband's immigration case right at the end? I'm a widower. I lost my wife, Anne, 34, just minutes after she gave birth to our first baby, Sammy. She had a difficult pregnancy, so I took indefinite leave 3 months before she was due. Sammy's 4 months old now, and before I went back to work, I told my mother-in-law, Sandra, 56, about my plans and if she can recommend a nanny to take care of my daughter when I work. She offered to do it for free. I told her she's free to come by any time during the day if she feels uncomfortable with a nanny looking after Sammy, but she insisted on doing it herself. So I said yes and gave her a copy of the house keys. She comes 30 minutes before I leave for work, and when I come home, she stays for dinner and leaves after putting Sammy to sleep. Everything was fine for the first couple of weeks until I noticed that Sammy's not feeding as much. Her formula is barely touched. I asked Sandra about it and why Sammy's not feeding well. She said that she's trying to breastfeed my daughter. At first I thought she was joking, then I realized that she wasn't. She said that Sammy needs to latch on for a few minutes every day to activate her milk production. I almost lost it. I told her that she cannot do that and that she needs to stop. She said that she will, but I caught her again when I walked into my daughter's room and she was forcing Sammy to latch. I confronted her and told her that she's no longer my baby's nanny. I didn't ask for the keypack as she's still welcome to my home anytime she wants to visit. I asked for a 1-week leave from work to take care of my daughter and find a nanny. I found one, but after 2 days she never returned. I called her and she said that my mother fired her the day before. I asked her to describe the woman and I was living when I realized it was Sandra. She came into my house using her key and fired my nanny. I was about to call her when she showed up and convoluted the story like how I hired an incompetent nanny, etc, etc. I told her to leave, but she refused and told me that she's calling CPS because I'm endangering my child. We argued back and forth before I called the police and she was charged with trespassing. I know my mother-in-law is grieving the loss of her daughter. I am too. But she crossed the line when she disregarded my wishes. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law are calling me ruthless and I am now second-guessing myself. Have I taken it too far by calling the police? Am I the asshole for calling the police on my mother-in-law after she entered my home and fired my babysitter? 26 and my sister Anna, 24, married my friend Lance, 27. He was the cool guy in our friend group, handsome, mysterious, smart, and quiet. I don't know how he ended up with my sister. She's the total opposite, loud, funny, and outgoing. She's beautiful though, really beautiful, and when they got together, everyone saw how good they looked. Anna seemed to be really in love with him like all the time. She used to say how dreamy he was, how good he treated her, and how spoiled she felt. But Lance was always so stern and quiet. She would revolve around him at family gatherings, but he wouldn't engage that much with everyone but me and her. I was surprised when he asked her to marry him. My sister never took the wifey role too serious. She had a non-traditional wedding and Lance went along with it. She made a bunch of rules that he agreed to and then they moved into his house. Anna banned house utensils from the wedding list. She doesn't work, didn't finish her studies, and doesn't plan on having any kids. My sister is pretty much only into her looks, and I didn't think that Lance cared for that before. She's always on Snapchat or Instagram. I thought that after getting married, she would dress more appropriate since she's used to wearing crop tops, blouses, dress, and shirts that showed her cleavage, short skirts, or tight jeans, but she says that Lance likes her just fine. Last week was my dad's birthday and we had a party. My sister and Lance came and she was wearing a pretty short floral dress. Nonetheless, most of the men were looking at her, including my dad's friends. Lance was as stoic as always, and my sister came to my mom and I saying that she didn't know why he was so quiet since he's not like that. But he is like that, so what the fuck? That's when I told her that if she didn't dress like that, then he might take her more seriously. She got sad and sat quietly for the rest of the night, and I didn't think much of that. But a few days ago, Lance texted me saying that he would appreciate it if I didn't comment on his wife's way of dressing again. Am I the asshole for telling my sister that her husband would take her more seriously if she didn't dress like she did? My wife and I hired a babysitter, Adeline, 18, for our kids 8 months, 2, 4, 5, and 7 a few months ago. Adeline is great with the kids and she's the only babysitter that can handle so many young kids. However, a couple problems are that she's consistently late. It's usually no more than 5 minutes, but she has been 10 and even 15 minutes late. Another thing is, after she gets everyone in bed, she spends the rest of the night on her phone or laptop. She never cleans up in the playroom because she claims it's always messy and she doesn't know where anything goes and will only clean up what she did with the kids. For example, Adeline did an art project with my 3 older kids and cleaned the counters and the floor after the art project, but she didn't pick up the toys that were in the living room or do the dishes. Another problem is that her outfits can be a little inappropriate for the kids so young. Crop tops, shorts, skirts, dresses that are a little too short or low cut. I've asked my wife to talk to her about it. I thought that it would be more comfortable coming from another woman, but she refused, even though she admitted that she would like Adeline to wear slightly less revealing clothes. My parents are in town and they wanted to take the kids on a walk. While on the walk, they saw Adeline running in a sports bra and shorts that barely covered anything. All of my kids had seen it and we heard about how they had seen Adeline without a shirt for days. My 5-year-old has also been talking about how pretty she is and that he's going to marry her when he's older, which is completely inappropriate. I decided to fire her because of the reasons listed above. When I told my wife, she started screaming at me because she thinks that Adeline is a great babysitter and she's reasonably priced. I told her that Adeline is a bad influence and I don't want her around my kids, but she's refusing to speak to me until I call her back and offer her job back. She even wants me to offer her a raise if she says no. Am I the asshole for firing the babysitter for being a bad influence? I was in elementary school. I was the type of kid who got disrupts class often on the report card and I never focused much on my school. My district had this system where they would pair high schoolers with younger kids to help them with school, etc. My mom made me do that after I kept getting in trouble. My tutor was a freshman named Abby and she would come to our house after school to help me with my homework or something. My brother John was the same age as Abby, so they would talk to each other and ended up dating. She stopped tutoring me officially after like a month, but since she was at our house a lot, I talked to Abby a lot as well and we were close as well. Fast forward 10 years, Abby and John got married and had a kid together. 5 years later, John tells me that he's getting a divorce because he's met someone new. It sucked because I liked John and Abby together a lot, but whatever. He then tells me that he had an affair with his new girlfriend. Also sucks, and I told him that he shouldn't have hurt Abby like that, but whatever. I also asked Abby how she was doing and she wasn't doing well, but she told me that she didn't want her to be the reason I have a bad relationship with my brother. However, 2 months before the wedding, Abby calls me and tells me that my brother's girlfriend has been harassing her nonstop. She showed me the text and his girlfriend was saying some pretty disturbing things about how she's so much better than Abby, taunting Abby for having a shared custody of the kid now, etc. Just making fun of her and bullying her. I told my brother about this and he said that he would ask his girlfriend about it. A month later, I asked him if he ever brought it up and he said that he saw nothing wrong with the text, which pissed me off. I confirmed that he saw the same text that I saw. Abby apologized for involving me in the whole thing in the first place and encouraged me to still go to the wedding, where my brother asked me to make a speech. The speech went well until I made a joke. The gist of the joke was me turning to his new wife and telling her that if she's learned anything from this, she should know that my brother will never let his wife stop him from finding the love of his life. This got my brother and his wife really mad and they kicked me out shortly after, and my brother has been calling and texting me nonstop yelling at me. Am I the asshole for making a joke about my brother's affair at his wedding? We had a wedding 2 days ago. A friend of ours was getting married. Many of our friends were also invited since we're all a huge company and we know each other. At some point, the girlfriends, partners, wives of the guys were left alone at the table and we kind of chatted and left the rest of the men to have some space on their own. So this guy's girlfriend, that guy is also a friend, was with us at first, but after a while she got up and started going around her boyfriend. She would not leave him alone, and me and the other woman found it extremely disrespectful how she kept following him around and not giving him space. So I called her name and told her to approach me for a bit. I kindly told her that she was being disrespectful by following her boyfriend around and not giving him space to spend time with other men and how she should sit down with us instead. She said, "Thanks, but I'm okay, don't worry about it," and left again. I followed her and told her that she's looking like a clown for following her boyfriend around like a lost puppy and she better act serious and sit the fuck down with us. That's when she got all pissy and told me to mind my business and how this doesn't concern me. Then her boyfriend came to me. Again, her boyfriend is also a friend of mine and told me that I was out of line for trying to police what his girlfriend does and where she goes. He told me that she has social anxiety and it's one of the few public and crowded events that she's attended in a while and doesn't do well with strangers, which is what we are to her. I told him that I was looking out for him in case she annoyed him by following him around and I just thought that he should have some space. He told me that I should have minded my business and not to get involved. Am I the asshole for making fun of a guy's girlfriend for following him around an event the whole night?